Okay, we've all been there, right? That test you just knew was great and that other one you absolutely hated. But what really makes a test good or bad? It's not just a gut feeling, you know. There's actually a science behind it. And today, we're going to dive right into what makes an assessment really work.
So let's start with a big one. Does a hard test automatically mean it's a good test? It's a super common idea, but honestly, it's a myth. Difficulty has almost nothing to do with how good a test is. So if it's not about being hard, then what is it about? What are the real ingredients here?
Well, it turns out that the experts have a pretty clear answer. They say that every single good test, I'm talking from a little pop quiz all the way up to a final exam, has to have 5 key qualities. You can think of them like the essential ingredients in a recipe. If you leave even one out, the whole thing can just completely fall apart.
So, what are they? Okay, here you go. Practicality, reliability, validity, authenticity, and washback. Now we'll get to all of these eventually, for sure. But today, we're going to really zero in on the first two, the foundational pillars, practicality and reliability. If you can get these two right, you're already well on your way to a really solid test.
All right, first up, practicality. This one is, well, it's the ultimate common sense check. Seriously, before you get into any of the fancy, complex science of testing, you got to ask one super simple question. Can we actually do this test in the real world?
So what does that mean? A test is only practical if it works with the resources you actually have. We're talking about money, time, and just how easy it is to pull off. I mean, you could have a test that looks absolutely brilliant on paper, but if it's way too expensive or takes forever to run, it's pretty much useless.
I love this car analogy because it just nails it. Think about it. A Ferrari is an incredible machine, an absolute marvel of engineering, right? But for a family of 5 trying to go grocery shopping, it's completely impractical. That simple, boring family car is way more valuable in that situation because it actually fits the context. And tests are exactly the same. The best test isn't the fanciest one, it's the one that's right for the job. And this happens in the real world all the time. Let's look at some examples of impractical tests. Imagine a one-on-one oral exam for a class of 150 students. You do the math. That would take something like 450 hours to conduct. Or what about a test that needs some super expensive software that the school just can't afford? Or maybe an essay test where the teacher has to grade for 50 hours straight to get it done overnight. All of these are dead on arrival. They fail the practicality test before they even get started.
Okay, so that's practicality. Now for a second principle. This one's a little more technical, but it is absolutely critical. It's called reliability. And if you think of practicality as the reality check, then reliability is the consistency check.
So what do we mean by that? Well, a test is reliable if it gives you stable, consistent results over and over again. The best way to think about it is like a good, solid measuring tape. Every time you use it, it gives you the exact same measurement. An unreliable test, on the other hand, that's like trying to measure something with a stretchy piece of elastic. Good luck with that.
Okay, let's make this super concrete. Imagine you step on a bathroom scale in the morning. The first reading, 70 kilograms. All right, fine. Seems about right. But you're not totally sure, so you step off and then step back on. And now it says 75 kilograms. Wait, what? That's a huge difference.
So you try it just one more time to be sure, and now it's telling you you're 68 kilograms. It is completely all over the place.
What's the bottom line here? You can't trust the number. The scale isn't reliable, so the data it's giving you is totally worthless. And an unreliable test is exactly the same thing. It gives you scores that you just can't trust.
So that begs the question, right? What makes a test or that crazy bathroom scale so unreliable? What are the culprits here? Well, it turns out there are a few key things that can totally sabotage the consistency of any assessment. Usually, unreliability comes from one of 3 main places. First, it could be the student themselves. You know, maybe they're sick or super tired or just having a really bad day. Second, it could be the test itself. Maybe the instructions are confusing or there are typos or the room is super noisy. Or third, and this is a huge one, it could be the rater, the teacher, the person who's actually doing the grading.
This gets us to something called the inter-rater problem. That's about consistency between different graders. Just imagine this scenario. 2 different teachers grade the exact same essay. Teacher A reads it and gives it a 95, an A, awesome. But then teacher B grades it and gives it a 75, a C. So which grade is right? The student's score is basically just pure luck, depending entirely on whose desk the paper landed on. That is a classic textbook example of low reliability.
But it gets even trickier. There's also the intra-rater problem. This is about consistency within the same person. Let's say a teacher starts grading at 8 p.m. They're fresh, focused, they grade an essay and give it a solid B. But now it's a 1 a.m. They're exhausted, frustrated, and they grade a very similar essay and give it a D. Even the same person isn't being consistent from 1 hour to the next. The reliability is just completely shot.
Okay, so we've established a test has to be practical and it has to be reliable. Got it. But this leads to a really fascinating, almost paradoxical question. Is it possible for a test to be perfectly reliable and still be a really, really bad test? No, seriously, think about that for a second. Can a test give you the exact same consistent result every single time, making it super reliable, but that result is just completely fundamentally wrong? The answer, which might surprise you, is a big yes.
And here's how that can happen. Let's say your goal is to test a student's English speaking ability. So you design a 100-question multiple-choice grammar test. Now, is that test reliable? Absolutely. A machine can grade it, the score will be the exact same every single time. It's perfectly consistent. But here's the million-dollar question, does it actually measure their speaking ability? Of course not even close.
And this right here brings us to one of the most important ideas in all of testing. A test can be reliable, but not valid. And that word, valid, introduces our third and, you could argue, most important principle. See, reliability just makes sure you're measuring something consistently. But validity asks a much deeper question. Are you measuring the right thing? And that concept, validity, it's often called the king of all the principles of assessment. It is the ultimate measure of a test's quality. It's so critical, so important that it really deserves its own deep dive. So we're going to unpack that huge question. Is the test actually measuring what it says it's measuring in our very next explainer?